afternoon if you're joining us from China or that part of the world. Hi, it's John Kearon, Chief Juicer of BrainJuicer, and I'm joined with Richard, who's our DigiVisionary. Hello, Richard. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can indeed. Morning, John. Morning, everyone.
It's the wonders of webinars. I've no idea where in the UK Richard is right now, but it's early. We're armed with a cup of tea, and we're ready to talk to you about research robots. If you're ready to listen. So
I'm actually in the juicing centre in London. I got in bright and early to get the best of the coffee and the biscuits before the rest of the juicers get here. So
very
I
impressive.
know.
Terrific. Okay. Well, look, let's see if we can do justice to. I mean, to be honest, one of the most fascinating areas that we've been working on, for the last couple of years, and what we're going to attempt to do is to really lay bare how it actually works. So rather than just kind of, present you with the ready-made and here's one, with brilliant insights, we want to actually, if we do our job well, by the time we finish, it's going to be about 30 minutes, okay? So not too long, and we're going to try and go through. By the time we get to the end, hopefully you'll have a real sense of how DigiViduals, these research robots, are actually created, how they run, what they pull back, and what's the role, if you like, of the robot versus what's the role of Richard and his team curating and pulling insight and threads together into something coherent. Okay, let's kick off. Okay. Richard, I don't know. I think you may have control.
Oh. Try that, John.
Okay. Here we go. You see, the thing about technology, which I want to come on to, is pure robot. If you think of things, I mean, we've been endlessly fascinated as humans by robots, by automata, by things that really, work on their own. It's one of those endlessly intriguing, whether it's from the Victorian, autonoma, which people didn't believe. They thought they had a man inside it, and sometimes they did, by the way. Or whether it's the toys that were hugely popular a few Christmases ago, the Robo-Sapiens. The thing about them is robots tend to be cute, they tend to be fascinating, and they tend to be slightly useless on their own, unless they're reduced to one specific task. Even the cleverest robot still can't catch a ball. Not that I'm saying that catching a ball is the height of human achievement, but the thing about machines on their own is they can do a lot. They can do a hell of a lot of heavy lifting, but on their own they are a little bit limited. On the other side, in our business, there are some very brilliant planners and researchers and marketeers around. The David Ogilvies of this world, I guess, if we really think about the sort of some of the famous kind of researchers and planners and creatives in his case. The problem is, that is in limited supply. And so what we want to share with you is the man-machine combination, the RoboCop of market research, if you like, because that is what DigiViduals are. They're not just pure robots. They're actually a robot working in concert with a talented researcher, and it's the combination that makes it, so magical. But where I want to start is with this scary-looking man. So this is David Basola, and David runs a company called the Filter Factory, PHPH. And Richard and I met David when he spoke at one of our fests. We had an innovation fest in Germany. David lives in Berlin. And he came and presented, and to be honest, it was an absolutely intriguing presentation. And I think everyone in the room had the same feeling, which is, wow, this sounds like something straight out of the future, out of a science fiction novel. But I'm not sure I really understand it. And what David told us, he told us the story of a project that he was working on for Ford Motor Company. And it was the launch of the Ford Focus, I believe. And basically what they'd asked him and his team to do was to create a soap opera, online soap opera. So this could run and run and run and run, and they wanted it to be many episodes and pretty involved. And the whole point of a soap opera, you know, is to run and run. But they had a tiny budget, you know, compared to a real soap opera. And so what they came up with, which used some of their algorithms, which I'll talk about in a minute, was the idea that there was a sperm donor in the UK who the latest legislation had allowed him to find out any children that had actually, you know, kind of come to life as a result of his sperm, and the answer was there were 22 of them. And the soap opera was basically him driving around Europe, visiting each of the 22 children, his children, who were in different cities in Europe. And so what David and the team had to do was they had to actually create a credible episode, whether it be Paris, Berlin, Barcelona, Madrid, Lisbon. And there was no way, even with a huge, you know, production budget, that you could have really done that justice, or even done it, you know, with a film crew. You couldn't have just got it in. And so what they were doing is they were using social media and the algorithms that they'd been cooking up to basically get the web to generate some of the storyline and generate the actual pictures and the blogs and the places that became part of the film. They actually made the soap operas out of content that was already on the internet, and then they wove the car and the characters into it. And yeah, everyone at the end had the same sort of jaw-dropping, wow, can you really do that? And then they showed us, you know, a couple of bits of the episodes. It was very convincing. And the thought came up, well, how would you apply that to market research? So that's really what BrainJuicer has been doing. And Richard and I will tell you and show you, hopefully, how all that works now. So, DigiViduals, digital individuals, is what we've created out of it. Yeah, and what these are, going to break all rules of presentation and read, because it's pretty weird, even for us. Digital characters, that's what these are. They're programmed to listen to and report back on what people with similar interests are saying, in order to build a rich picture of their lives from which talented researchers can generate inspiration, insights, and ideas. Okay, hopefully you're getting a kind of sense of what they are. What I want to do is show you how they work by going to a really kind of basic, strip it down. Yeah. So philosophically, if you like, at its simplest, every time we go on to the social web, every time we go onto the internet, we are turning our lives into data. Yeah? And then what we're doing at BrainJuicer with the Filter Factory is we're turning that data back into digital individuals who are a composite. So they are basically a program of a particular marketing construct. So it could be a market segmentation, a brand persona, yeah, or a target audience. But we're creating one individual who represents many. And the way we do it is through the data that people have actually generated, you know, on the social web, and weaving it cleverly back into a coherent, credible individual. Let's give you a flavor. Let's start at the really, really, really kind of basic. This is an example that David and the Filter Factory team have put together for Darth Vader. Okay, so imagine we were creating a DigiVisual of Darth Vader. This is how you start to program it. Yeah? So you actually take feelings and associations. This is how you program it. What's the emotional state of Darth Vader? Well, let's say it's angry. What are the list of words that associate with anger? For him, it's Jedi, scum, airbend. And the list of places that we'd associate with feeling angry, the Death Star. Yeah? And then you do the same again. Evil is the second emotional state, and the Jedi and the universe, etc. So So this is how you put it together. It races out onto the internet to search for content, yeah, that fits the combination of those kind of keywords and those associations. And this is the sort of thing that it's bringing back. Okay, so everything that it finds, it brings back automatically. So let's have a look at some of this. You know, this is a tweet. I'm still feeling dark. Yeah, which is very dark. Whistling about Luke Skywalker, Dark Lord, evil. And if you actually turned what you were seeing there in the blog back into a data map, what you're really looking at is this. The keywords, if you like, find masses of content and they start balling it into areas of interest. That's what it looks like at a kind of macro scale. And then Richard and the team are taking that and pulling out the bits that weave into a total story. All right, let me give you a kind of a real, you know, client-based example. So this was something we were working with a client, and we had to try and bring to life a particular segment. Yeah, and this is their client. This is the client segmentation. Who they are, what defines them. So they're 18 to 24, younger, more likely to be single. You know, more likely to live in a kind of, I think, more likely to be found in Germany and Spain than other countries was one of the things. It was really around pizza. Anyway, so that's something you probably recognize as a typical approach. And what we do is we turn that into the keywords, and we also create a person. So we give him a name, in this case, Alessandro. He's 22. He lives in Milan. We actually give him an address where he lives and where he works, so that the whole thing, when it goes live, is actually happening in real time. I know it sounds a bit weird, but Alessandro gets up at a certain time each day, and he actually goes to work. If you were on Foursquare, you'd be able to see Alessandro moving around Milan. And then you've got his core characteristics and emotional states, etc. Now, you switch Alessandro on, he goes live, if that's the appropriate word, and this is what it starts to generate. Again, at the network map level, you start to see his interests, you know, balling together and collating into something coherent. And just out of those simple keywords and that simple, you know, kind of algorithms, you can start to pull out really complicated, interesting, beautiful even stuff. We couldn't resist this video of birds flocking, which is beautiful to watch. It's incredible. How do they do it? Well, they do it through really, really simple rules, which is follow the bird in front and basically move when they move. And that's kind of how it works. And that's how they've managed to program that into computer animation, and they can now do, you know, bird flocking scenes in animated movies. All very beautiful. But it's very simple rules producing something very, you know, very complex. So this is Alessandro, 1 week. He's been alive for 1 week, and this is his blog. And these are the things that are coming back. And I'll tell you the story that seems to be emerging about Alessandro, and hopefully you'll get a flavor of how this starts to work. Okay, so remember, he's 22, he lives in Milan, and according to our blog, he definitely has a picture of Che Guevara on the wall. You know, he's got a sort of touch of a rebellious spirit. By the way, his job, he works in a pretty dead-end job, but one day he's going to be a photographer, by the way. You know, so he has aspirations for a sort of a more artistic career, but the reality is something a lot more mundane. He's very into music, and by the way, proper artists, according to Alessandro. You know, artists that actually write their own lyrics. And he has a pair of bongo drums, which he actually kind of, you know, he plays along to the music. Other things we know about him is I'm afraid, you know, he's very messy. He spends quite a lot of time in bed, and I'm afraid it wouldn't be a euphemism to say he's a bit of a wanker. Okay, I know this is probably at this time in the morning, at least for us, it's, you know, really shouldn't be talking about this, but to tell you that you bought 100 condoms, you know, recently, I think is more hope over experience. You know, Alessandro lives most of his life on his own, in his own flat, and a lot of it is in his mind. a bit like his aspirations to be a photographer. But, you know, he's all right. He's pretty typical and obviously very interested and keen on girls, and he hopes that lots of exciting things will happen. Anyway, that was just to give you a flavor of a 1-week-old DigiVidual. And already I hope you can start to see that he really starts to come to life as a real person. Okay. Richard, over to you. Richard's going to take you through, you know, some more developed ideas and stories, and so you can see how they start to look after a few weeks and what we do with them.
Cheers. Thanks, John. Yes. So I'd like everyone to say hello to Mike. Mike is also a DigiVidual, just like Alexandro. I thought for Mike is probably, as John said, a little bit further developed. So this is after about 4 weeks, and we're thinking about, okay, now we have all this information on the DigiVidual. How can we start to turn that into ideas and insights? And what we have here is Mike. We don't have any ideas and insights yet, but we do have a DigiVideo, which I'm going to show you, and a few other different themes coming out of his blog. Mike is a 19-year-old guy who lives in Melbourne, so a sort of similar age bracket to Alexandro, a little bit younger, but lives the other side of the world. And this particular DigiVidual was done for an ice cream project, and we had the quite interesting challenge of figuring out how can we get young men interested in ice cream, because now and today, young men just don't buy ice cream, they're not interested in it. So how can we make an ice cream product that's appealing for this age group? Okay, so zooming into Mike. So the first thing I'm going to show you is a DigiVideo of Mike. And what a DigiVideo is, it's a day in the life story of that particular DigiVidual's life. So what we're going to see here is a little bit of Mike's average sort of day. And the idea here is that you get a real feeling of who Mike is, and actually hopefully feels like a real person. It's not a real person, it's an amalgamation of lots of different people, but Mike should feel like a real person after seeing the video. I'm going to warn you now, there's a little bit of swearing in the video, nothing too strong, because it is still quite early in the morning. But if you are worried about those sorts of things, then look away or close your ears and what have you. There won't be any sound on the video due to the technology limitations of webinars. But if you do want to view the sound, you can go to the Vimeo page and watch the video. But in the meantime, I shall do a voiceover, almost like a sporting commentator. So it's definitely worth seeing the video of the music, because we do feel it adds a lot. But yes, let's see a day in the life of Mike. So if Mike getting up early in the morning, typical bedroom there, messy, not very happy about it. We have his mom nagging him to get up. Unfortunately, still lives with his mom. He rather wouldn't, but such are these things at the moment. First thing he does in the morning is check his text messages. He's got anything on his phone for his friends or his girlfriend. Driving to work too quickly. One of the things that Mike is really into is his car, modifying his car, driving it like a maniac. He also has a pretty standard job at a retail store, but at least it's to do with electronics, and he gets to play with stuff. And he's quite sociable. He gets to chat to the customers, especially if the customers are girls. Again, he's a 19-year-old guy. Let's say he's looking for people who have similar interests to him, whether that's playing with fire, blowing stuff up, cars, girls, eating too much food. We had several clips of things like man versus food on there, the whole idea of challenging himself. And then back again to the job that he loathes and detests a little bit. Another thing that came out from looking at Mike was a whole idea of travel, and then of course going out later and partying all the time. So that was just a minute's worth of video showing you sort of half a day in the life of Mike, and hopefully you feel like you know him a little bit better now. Along with the video, of course, this is a social media research approach. So we do bring back things like tweets and blog posts and all that sort of stuff. But a couple of tweets that Mike has brought back are things like my energy drink, a Corona, typical Mikey way of doing things. Also things like if you include getting drunk by the pool as the outdoors type, then yes, I'm the outdoors type. And again, just from these few little snippets, you can really get an idea of who Mike is. But along with that, so that's the sort of overview of Mike, is that there's this idea of themes and pulling out ideas from the DigiVidual. And roughly speaking, it doesn't always pan out that way, but roughly speaking, there's one idea or one theme per scene in the video. So each of those scenes in the video that you saw represent something interesting about Mike. And here is a thematic map, a breakdown of what those themes are. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just wanted to give you an idea of how all this works. So we have our themes about Mike. There's lots of stuff around him being part of a wider jilted generation. Actually, things for him are not as good for him as they were for his parents. The whole idea that one generation is going to be better off than the forthcoming generation is going to be better than the previous generation isn't really working as well for Mike. We have the whole idea of him wanting to do good despite all this selfishness. We had lots of interesting things around the role of masculinity. So actually, if he is struggling to get a job and education is expensive, and you can no longer measure your self-worth as a man based on just on what you earn, what other measures are there? Is it driving fast and taking risks? Is it doing good? What other things can we build upon there? There's lots of stuff around the digital, of course, which is super interesting, and the whole idea of Mike being hyper-connected to everyone, so actually not so much that is, he has friends in real life, he has friends around the world. Also the fact if he isn't online, being hyper-connected is going to miss out on stuff. So again, that was quite interesting. So all these ideas that are coming out from Mike. Okay, so that was Mike, and I'm going to show you a third DigiVidual, and this DigiVidual is Frank. So with Frank, again, he's a bit further along the funnel, a bit further along the process, and I'll show you the DigiVideo so you can get an idea of who Frank is. But the reason I wanted to show you Frank is that actually he's been through the process. We did the stuff that we did at Alexandra, we did the themes and all that sort of thing like we did with Mike, but then we took Frank and used all those ideas to generate insights and product ideas and all that sort of stuff. And one of the reasons I want to show you Frank is that this was done for an insurance company, so it's done for financial services, and one of the key questions we get when running projects like DigiViduals is, can you do DigiViduals for something like insurance, where it's maybe not the most upbeat of topics, they're not the sort of topic that people talk about a huge amount online. And also, Frank is older, so Frank is a 60-year-old guy living in the Midwest of America. And the other question I get is, can you do older DigiViduals? Can you do DigiViduals for older demographics? So I'll show you Frank's video. Again, there's the Vimeo link if you want to go and take a look with the music. But I will, again, do my sports commentary bit. So say hello to Frank. So one of the interesting things about Frank is that we have to remember he's part of the boomer generation, and he's been sort of looking at collecting lots and lots of different stuff and collecting it, things like his house, like his car, but those things are pretty static. And one of the things that really concerns him is the fact that his family is always changing, and that's the thing that he worries about the most. He's a pretty well-off guy. It's getting towards retirement. Actually, the thing that concerns him is who's his daughter going to marry, and how does he deal with all these changes, not within himself, not within his immediate family, but all the changes around him. And then we have Bill Hicks doing his famous "Just a Ride" skit. But the thing is with Frank is that actually for him, it's not just the ride. He needs to sort of make something lasting. That's it. So I'm not going to show you the rest of the video because I want to get onto the good bit, which is showing you the insights and ideas. But hopefully you get an overview that Frank is this older guy, closer to retirement, and we did all the themes in the workshop and lots of work with the client and all that sort of stuff. But one of the things that came out of this project was the insight that Frank's children are growing up and leaving home and can't physically be there for them as much as I'd like. And he needs a way to look after them and a way that gives him peace of mind without getting in the way of their independence. And from this insight, we developed the new product idea for insurance, the idea that you could have an insurance product for non-dependent children. So currently, once your child leaves home, they're pretty much by themselves insurance-wise. They're considered non-dependent, they have their own income, they have their own house, all that sort of stuff. Actually, could we not develop a product for Frank that allows him to give insurance to his kids, or at least let them get a discount for them, even if they aren't living at home, even if they aren't dependent on him? And that gives Frank a nice way that isn't too overbearing to help his children, even though they're not there anymore. Okay, so that was Frank. So that was an overview of DigiViduals with our 3 stages. Now what I'd like to talk about now is that's how we're doing DigiViduals now on a day-in, day-out basis. The final thing I'd like to talk to you about is what are the DigiViduals of the future going to look like, and what's going on in our forward thinking at the very bleeding edge of what we're doing here at BrainJuicer. But one of the really interesting things we've been working on is thinking about China, and it's the issue I'm going to talk about here is relevant for China, but also various other parts of the world as well. So talking to our clients in China and working with clients there, as this idea that there's 160 cities with more than 1 million inhabitants in China. And to put that in perspective, in the UK, where I'm sitting now, there's 2 cities with more than 1 million people. London, which is a big city, and Birmingham, with about 1 million people. So it's just huge. And one of the big challenges we're finding there is how can you conduct qualitative research in such a vast place? The current solution is that you go across and you maybe do focus groups in a few tier 1 cities, so Shanghai or Beijing, and that would be that. That would be your qualitative research. And I think there's a problem with that. It's ignoring these other 158 huge cities. Never mind everything else. So we set ourselves a challenge. Could we solve this problem of doing qualitative research on a huge scale? And we ran an experiment, and we've been running a number of different client projects in China. But the big experiment we did was to run 18 DigiViduals in 9 cities throughout China, with a mixture of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, dotted throughout the country, so north, south, east and west, and to see if we could come up with new ideas and interesting insights for each of the segments we looked at, but also in each of the cities as well. And what we found was that we were actually successfully able to pull social media content from Chinese services, and again, China's slightly different because it had its own social media ecosystem. So we're able to pull Chinese content from Chinese services for all these different cities and develop ideas off that, which we thought was really cool. And I was recently speaking at SMR Shanghai all about this. So if you want to have a look at the paper, please get in touch with us. And so related to this is that, okay, once you have all those DigiViduals, why just stop at having an ad hoc DigiVidual like the Franks and the Mikes and the Alexandros we saw? Wouldn't it be even better if you could have a continuous stream of these insights and ideas? And what we're thinking of doing now is what we're calling a DigiTrekker. I've just started doing these with clients in the UK, is that you have a DigiVidual, and that DigiVidual posts their blog, but then we take the best ideas and pictures and social media content and curate that into a blog that your clients and anyone in your organization can look at any time. So you have a continuous stream of immersion and inspiration based upon your target consumers. So that's it. Heading towards the end of the webinar now. Last thing I wanted to say was that you see all those red dots on there. There, where we've done DigiViduals across the world. So plenty in China, in the US, in Europe. Hopefully looking to do some more in Africa and the Middle East and stuff in the near future. But it is looking very international. And that's everything from me. Hopefully there'll be a couple of questions. Hopefully we've got some people thinking.
Yeah, I've just asked everyone to think of their questions. One that already came in was, but Mike's got pictures. How come Mike actually, it looks like it is a real person? And I think that is the point. What Richard and the team have created is this real sense of a person, a real person. The actual pictures are, we give an illusion, if you like, of a real person. And that's what the research robot and the talented researcher as a combination is doing. And all of the pictures, all of the content that you saw, whether it be in videos or the pictures or the blogs or the tweets, is all content from the web that happen to fit that particular profile, that particular segment, that particular target audience. And that's really what we're doing with DigiViduals, is we are bringing what is often a dry, useful, but a dry marketing construct, a composite, the ideal, individual, and we're bringing them to life with real humanity in a way that actually you start to feel this is a real person. I understand who this person is. And you should have the confidence that that person is representative of that particular target audience, that particular segment. And the creatives that we work with love it. And I would say, just by way of summary, and then I think there are more questions coming in, and let's answer them, is what DigiViduals does, I think, in our experience of all the DigiViduals that we've done across the world, is it's incredibly good as an immersive technique, both for the brand team and for any agencies that are associated in working with the brand team. You really get a sense of the person, the target audience, the segment. It's also very inspiring. It almost suggests ideas as you're kind of getting to know the person. And so it's a really good way to generate good insight and a great way to generate actual new product services and ideas and things like that coming out. And Richard's last bit, where he's talking about DigiTrekker, of course, is the way to then keep it alive so that your segment is actually a kind of living, breathing, blogging on a weekly basis, so you can follow and actually keep a sense of their life as they go through their year. Okay.
Yeah.
And
shall I answer some of the other questions? So we have a question: what is the methodology to construct DigiViduals? And by that, I'm taking how do we come up with those keywords in the first place? Well, the answer to that it varies on a project by project basis, and it depends how much you know about your target audience. So often we use segmentation data, who you saw with Alexandra. We often run a workshop off the back of that, so actually get brand managers and stakeholders in there to convert that segmentation data into the set of keywords, and we have a bunch of different workshop tasks where we can work in groups to do that. If we don't, the client doesn't have as much information on their target segment, or they don't know who their target segment is, then sometimes there's a UNA study or a survey beforehand that help generate the keywords. And the other really interesting way we generate keywords is for clients, if they're looking at, say, people who are interested in a particular thing online. So at the moment, I'm doing some work for a car company, and they're interested in understanding who's buying luxury sports cars. And we don't know much about them apart from they buy a certain brand of sports car. So what we're doing there is looking at people who are interested in that certain brand of sports car online, and then looking at what else they're interested in. So you can take a point, such as a brand or an idea, look at people who are interested in that, and look at what else they're interested in. And you can sort of start to build out a segmentation based on interests online like that. So there's a few different ways of developing the keywords, and hopefully that gave you a bit of an overview.
Okay. I guess a related one, is how are the themes identified, that Richard was perhaps talking about under Mike or Frank. Is it algorithmic based or is it more human analysis of the content from Jacques?
Yeah.
Okay. And the answer is very much it's the talent of good researchers, talented researchers like Richard and the team, pulling the threads together, things that keep coming up, by the way, so you get a sense of, from almost a quantitative point of view, of which themes keep coming up. But it's also weaving it together, understanding the character and feeling it, just like a great qualitative researcher would do, having run, kind of dozens of groups, if you like, across the world. That's the sort of the process. And it's the research robot doing the heavy lifting and the talented researcher weaving, pulling out the interesting parts and weaving it together. Richard, is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do, we have experimented, they continue to experiment with different algorithms that can group stuff based on topic and things like that. But actually, when we compare it to the quality of having a research going and generate the themes themselves, actually, the research is winning out every time at the moment. It would be great one day if we could make part of my job obsolete, but that currently isn't really an option.
Yeah, and I don't think, Richard, I'm not sure, it is. I mean, I think although it's an intriguing challenge, it's the man-machine combination which is just always going to win, I think, rather than it being Big Blue versus Kasparov chess game. I think Kasparov with a program would be probably, unbeatable forever and ever. Jennifer's got a question about how do you have confidence that the person is representative, which is a great question. And what we're developing, the Chinese trying to work out if we could do this across, over 100 cities in China, for instance. It's like, well, how do we know that we've actually got the right sort of profile? What we're going to do is once you've got what Richard showed you in the video and the life story, is we're going to recruit, 75, 100 people of the target audience who are in the target audience, in that target segment, and basically share this person with them and basically get a sense of whether this represents, people like you. And we need to work out the confidence levels of how much it has to fit in order to, to work. But I think that's going to be increasingly how it works. I mean, up until now, it's because it's based on the segmentation that they've done. By definition, it fits, and it's a client-agency agreement on what feels like it fits together. And we had a lovely one for Philips we did, and it was a geek segment. And so we actually had a version of this. So they were the target audience. I mean, most people working at Philips were quite similar to this particular segment. And so we showed it to them, and they were like, "Yep, brilliant. That is us. Very, very good."
Absolutely. I mean, also to sort of build upon that, so DigiViduals, it's a qualitative methodology, and it's there to help us discover and come up with ideas and insights and hypotheses. It's not particularly there to be representative or valid in that sense, in the same way that focus groups aren't representative or valid in the sort of wider quantitative sense. But the other thing that we've been doing, and for instance we did on Mike as well, is that once we've come up with those insight statements or product ideas, we often test those quantitatively afterwards in front of the target group. So once we have an insight statement, we put it in front of the target group, and we have all sorts of measures around resonance and edge, and using another BrainJuicer product called Insights Validator. And what we found is that actually the DigiViduals come up with great insights, and often get into the top, not even quartile. I think it's the top 17% that we use as validated insights. So actually, there's a quantitative validation that we do off the back of this, sort of 9 times out of 10.
And then last question from Svetlana. How is it used? Could you give examples of how this leads to decisions and actions, which hopefully Richard's example there, gave you a flavor. But all of the projects we're doing, it's very action-orientated, in insight generation and idea generation orientated. So in addition to the immersion and the inspiration power of the Digi, it basically has to be so what. The so what is in generating really interesting insights, which is just said, we can then validate and prove the value of the insights that are coming out. So yeah, very action orientated, and all the clients where we've worked, love it because it's very inspiring.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. One of the things that I'm really concerned about is the social life of a DigiVidual debrief or presentation or workshop after we leave the room, and actually making sure the DigiVidual lives on and it comes to something. Whether that is a new product idea or communications idea that's then built into something else. I mean, to give you some slightly different examples, I've been doing some work with a charity in the US, and they were a little bit less about communications ideas and things like that, but they just wanted a way of making sure that their segment resonated within the business. So there we did the DigiVidual, we did the themes, and off the back of that we're having a sort of organizational-wide toolkit that we've been putting together, whereby people can view the DigiVideo, they can view the insights from the DigiVidual, and then they have almost like a traffic light system where they can use the traffic lights to assess the validity of any projects they're thinking of doing that target that segment. So that's been rolled out across the organization. It's something that sticks there. Recently, I actually got a sort of news update yesterday. I didn't have a chance to put it in the presentation because it would have been a really nice example, but I did some work with Kraft in Latin America on Trident, and they ran something called Project Fly. And there's an AdMap article on it, so if you Google AdMap and Project Fly and Kraft, you'll learn all about it. But essentially, that was a 2-week innovation hideaway where he did DigiViduals and a bunch of other stuff, and from that they've developed a whole bunch of ideas for Trident in Latin America, one of them being an exploding piñata, which was huge fun. So Google AdMap and Project Fly.
Very good.
And learn about the exploding piñata.
Well, Richard, I think on that note, the exploding piñata, we'll call it a day. I hope everyone found that useful. And thanks for joining us. Hopefully join us on the next one. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you all. Bye.